Shirali. So would you like to introduce yourself? What is your name and what do you do?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Shirali Patel. I work at Microsoft. I am a director there. I primarily launch the Office 365 clouds for government customers. So my entire career has been in supporting government, defense industry, as well as the Intel community. So couple of years ago, I moved to Microsoft and took on this new team. And our main role is to basically sell and make sure that the government has all of the Office 365 or the Microsoft 365 services that the company provides, because everybody needs Office, right? Everybody needs PowerPoint and Word and Outlook. So that's what I do at work. By education, I am an electrical engineer, and then I have a master's in engineering management, and also a doctorate, so like a PhD in engineering management as well. So my career has mainly focused on technology management, be it hardware first, and then moved over to software management more. And I lead teams to product teams to launch new products. That's kind of been my passion.
You mentioned that you moved from hardware to software. Is there anything in particular that pushed you towards that change or?
I definitely the industry trends, but also just opportunities that came my way, and the fact that I'm always up for a challenge and ready to explore. So I started working. I used to work on satellites and ground stations because that's where I was when I was in the military. So as an Air Force officer, I used to, manage programs that would acquire satellite systems on the ground stations for those. From that, I moved into border security, so installing radars and electro-optical or infrared cameras on the borders to monitor activity, monitor people, monitor any kind of weapons that are crossing the border illegally. And then eventually moved more into the software into that system, and then finally ended up going more into not just software development, but the security piece of it. So cybersecurity on those, so hardening those software and hardware integrated products, moved more into the software cybersecurity part. And that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at now.
Okay, that actually seems really interesting. But before we go further into that, um, let's talk about your childhood. So, what was your childhood in terms of exposure to women in STEM? Like, did you have a lot, or were you just kind of looking at men in STEM all the time?
So I will have to say it's the former. My mom is a doctor. My dad is a PhD in chemical engineering, but I grew up around, and everybody in my family is basically in some form or the other have been in STEM. So my mom, my cousins, my aunts, so anybody that's close to me or I'm close to have always kind of pushed me, urged me to do better, bigger things in life. And my mom's like my biggest role model in that case, where back in her age as well, she pushed through. Her dad was a professor, her mother was a teacher in physics. So she had a STEM background as well. And then she ended up becoming a doctor. And I've always had all support from all sides of my family in making sure that I got to do what I wanted to do. Um, yeah, so I've always had very strong role models growing up in the STEM field. Nobody's ever told me that I couldn't do it. Everybody's always urged me to push forward and do better things. And I mean, with everything that I've been provided in my life, I've lived a pretty privileged life. So if not me, then who else to make the world better, right? So my goal has always been to keep marching forward, making sure that I'm causing a very positive impact, and leaving a very positive footprint in the field that I've chosen in making the world a better place.
When you grow up and when you like went to high school, did you notice any differences in like the atmosphere of with like women in STEM in high school compared to like your childhood? Like was it harder to express your passions in STEM due to these stereotypes?
So my high school was a little different. I went to an all-girls school. So I went to a convent, and the teachers there were also always very positive in providing, the right kind of guidance to all the girls in the school. So high school, I wouldn't say I saw a lot of differences or any kind of resistance or anybody trying to hold me back or even telling me that, hey, that's not something girls do. I never got that. So I consider that a very positive upbringing on my part. But when I did go to college, I went to a technical school, right? So I went to Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, and some of my engineering classes were two girls and 50 boys. So in a class of 50, there were like two women. And that's where I first noticed what a gigantic discrepancy there was in women in engineering, women in the STEM fields. Even though there were a lot of women in the university, most of them gravitated more towards, I would say, definitely STEM, but more towards biology, more towards chemistry, not as many as in pure, software, computer, hardware engineering bases. So that's where I really saw a lot of discrepancy there.
So what was your major in college again? And I guess like what did you really like about it? Did you ever decide to change it?
I thought about changing it a million times. I started off, so my major was electrical engineering. And when I say electrical, I basically did circuits and, radars. So more to do with technology that uses waves and, promotes sound or light and that technology, right? So very electronics focused more so than the actual electricals focused, right? But it's all the same major. I thought a lot of times of changing it. Um, at that time, I didn't think computers was the right major for me, or if it was, I wanted to go more into hardware. I'm not a very strong coder. And I want to state that up front that you don't have to be a very strong coder to be working in a technical field that deals mainly in software. Okay. So coding is not, it's an art, it's a talent along with a skill set. Skills you develop. The art and talent has to come from within, right? So I can tell you that I could have developed the skill, but I never had the passion to do it in that direction. So I ended up sticking with the hardware piece. But later on in life, like I explained earlier, things kind of changed. It moved around. I moved more into security pieces versus actually hard coding. So that kind of helped change my career a little bit as well.
I think it's important to know that I guess you don't have to know coding to go into technical stuff, like even if it's not doctor medical field related stuff. Because I'm sure like a lot of people are like really interested, but they're like, "Oh, I can't code or coding's too hard." But yeah, I think that's a very important message. Moving on to like the present, what does a day in your life look like? And do you face any challenges or have you faced any challenges for like being specifically a female in STEM?
Um, I typically have a very positive attitude, but there's always workplace, I'm missing the word here, but there are always like these perceptions that people come in to workplace with, right? I've worked in the military, I've worked in three different companies now, and it's always been very different in each of those experiences. In the military, I worked primarily with a lot of men, not that many women, even though the field was, not very aggressive. Like I was an engineer in the military. So it's a desk job, right? I mean, women can do it. But again, 20 years ago, there were not a lot of women opting for engineering. And if they were not really looking to go into the military. So a very small group of women that ended up in the same kind of billet that I did. So that was the first one where I ended up having to work with a lot of men. And there's always this constant need to prove yourself because you always feel like you're not being you're not being valued as much as a male colleague of yours is. And that has, kind of it, I feel like it's always been in the back of my mind, at least for the first 10 years of my career, I would say. Moving to Microsoft changed that a lot because I felt the vibe had shifted. Maybe it's the company, maybe it's the fact that it's more West Coast culture and they are a lot more open to it. Maybe it's just the times that have changed, right? But I really did see that big difference jumping from the defense industry where, it's primarily a lot of, and I don't know if I should say this on this interview, but a lot of old white men, right? They run these companies, the whole industry. Moving to Microsoft, the diversity and the overall, the different personalities that make up this big, gigantic technology base. It was eye opening, and it's the first time that I felt that I'm not being judged for being a woman.
Is there anything that pushed you? How did you start working for the military?
So it was an opportunity. I actually ended up getting an internship with the Air Force Research Labs. And after I worked the summer there, they offered me full scholarship, room and board for my university for the remaining 3 years. So I did that at the end of my freshman year, going into my sophomore year. So I had 3 more years of university and they paid for everything. So that was definitely a big factor in consideration of why I wanted to join the military. But overall, I joined it because I got to work with cutting edge technology. I mean, that was the big challenge, the big, the twinkle in my eye. The stuff that I did with the research lab, this is stuff that you don't get to see outside of the military because it's being worked specific to that industry. And things that you see there, you don't really get to see anywhere else. So that was really what pushed me. I really enjoyed working on satellite systems. In my career, I've done a lot of work with satellite systems, with the sensors that are on satellites and how you bring that data back to the ground. I've also worked on data analytics. My last role, I worked on creating AI ML, which is like artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms that helped analyze big data for big data that came through some of these big satellites, right? So satellites are constantly collecting data and they collect a lot of data. So how do you change it into structured data and create intelligence out of it, right? So that's kind of what I worked on, creating those algorithms with my team. So overall, everything that I've done with the military or in the defense industry, the technology has always just been the driving force. And there's always that sense of achievement when you're supporting the troops on the ground, and the fact that you're actually helping defend your country. So it's all of that together is what made me move to the military to begin with.
What advice would you give to young girls who don't feel confident in pursuing their passion or going to STEM?
Like my big advice to girls would be to not underestimate themselves. Okay, that would be number one. I don't know if I don't have statistics in my head, but there's a study on how um, if a man knows about 60% of what's written in the job description, they will go ahead and apply because they'll think, hey, I got this, right? But if in a job description, um, you know, women typically tend to not apply unless they are 110% confident that they know everything in their description. I'm in a meeting. Thank you. So that to me says that women always underestimate themselves, and girls don't really push themselves to take on that challenge. They always feel like maybe they can't do it. And if they can't do it, people are going to judge them. So I would just really advise to, to push past that fear, push past that block in your head, and actually just take on the challenge. So that's kind of where I would really recommend.
And if these girls like don't have they like don't come across any opportunities to pursue these passions, what would you recommend? Like what would you recommend, I guess, starting to do? Maybe before college or even during college.
So I would say before college, while you're in high school, I think there are a lot of opportunities in high school that, where they can, where they can have a connection with any STEM type of um, projects, or any STEM kind of opportunities. There are math-based competitions. There are science-based competition. You can do the robotics competition, like the first Lego League if you're into Legos, right? So there's a lot of those options which really help you guide your passion and figure out if this is really what you want to do in life, right? Is robotics something that challenge you? Are you really into math? Are you a very logical thinker? All of those skills, if you start developing them early enough, pre-college, will definitely help you in navigating the murkiness of going into a STEM field when in college, right? Because a lot of times you feel overwhelmed. It's a lot. It is not something that you do on a day-to-day basis. So when you don't see all of that in your daily life in your high school, then you kind of do get a little more overwhelmed when you're in college. So that's kind of where I would tell, I would tell high school kids to move that way. Another thing I would just say is perseverance, right? So keep at it. Just because you feel like you can't get it doesn't mean you really can't get it. Add that word yet behind it, right? So you can't get it yet. If you keep trying, eventually you're going to get there. So the opposite of winning is not failing, it's learning, right? So anytime you fail, you're actually learning more, and the next time you're going to be that much better. So that perseverance really helps as well. Other opportunities that you can find, you can go to conferences. There are a lot of conferences geared toward STEM fields. Like I know Society of Women Engineering is one that really has helped me a lot. I've been a member since I was in college, and I've done a lot of sessions with them during their conferences where I'm a speaker there, and I've also attended a lot of sessions. I've attended panel discussions, trying to motivate other younger girls. There are a lot of such opportunities. Girls Who Code is another group that does a lot for high school kids. There is what is that one organization? I did it. I forget, but there are other organizations like that that really focus on bringing STEM awareness amongst younger kids and high school kids. So that's something that you should definitely pursue.
And then final question, what does a female role model mean to you? And I guess you might have already answered this question, but who are the most important female role models in your life?
Personally, so personally, I basically use anybody that I see that I admire as a role model, right? Or as a mentor. So I don't really say, hey, you're my mentor and I'm going to keep following you and I'm not going to pay attention to anybody else. I try to find the positives in anybody's journey and I ask questions. I try to figure out what they did in life, how I can apply it to my life. It makes sense to me, right? So I will talk to anybody and everybody, my colleagues, my supervisors, the vice presidents at my company. If I get a chance to talk to them in an informal setting, I'm constantly bombarding them with questions about their life journey, their career journey, how they've gotten past certain blocks, stuff like that. Even in my personal life, I have a lot of good role models across, and it's not just women; it's also men, right? And I'm always looking to emulate the good qualities that I find in these people. So that would be my one thing. You don't have to declare somebody a role model. You can find positive things in everybody around you and try to adopt that in your life.
Okay, thank you. That was a really great interview, actually. It was really eye-opening. I really enjoyed listening to you talk about your work and your life. Is any last words that you have to say?
Um, no, I think I'm good.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.